bit of introduction to that special man today on that little video clip from Moving America's Soul on Suicide. By the way, I'm Dr. John Draper. I'm President of Research and Development at Government Solutions at Behavioral Health Link, and I'm really delighted that today we have Officer Kevin Briggs, who's better known as the guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge. And Kevin and I are going to be settling in for a little fireside chat shortly. Before we get there, a few things that we want to note. We've got over 500 unique speakers who've joined us on the Jam. This is Kevin's first time on the Jam, so he's joined this very illustrious list, and perhaps you can too if you're not on there yet. If you have something you want to share with us, or you know someone who really has something that they want to share with us that I think that you think would be of interest to many people. We're always looking to feature new voices and fresh perspectives. So if you're someone you know has some program news or anything else, you just come forward and let us know and throw your hat in the ring. We've also got this new live stream medium that we are adding to the other two mediums, which is obviously this live Zoom version. And then there is also the recorded version. But if you're in a car or something like that, have a hard time tuning in to the Zoom version, you've got the live stream. So we've got a lot of, you can go to crisis, actually talk what is it? It's talk.crisisnow.com, which actually I've got bookmarked, so I don't have to remember that. But you need to check that out if you want to get any of the resources that as well as see any of old uh, the old shows that you've not seen. We were just talking about that earlier, that there's many shows that we have that we need to catch up on. And last week we had a terrific show with Dr. Morgan Shields, who was talking about some amazing reforms in inpatient care. And you can see this new color-coded, if you can take a look at the key here, what you'll see is that for different codes, the yellow version is it's a traditional version of Crisis Jam, but the orange ones are the fireside chats, the blue ones are the live and on location, and of course the purple ones are the debates. We're trying to create a lot more engagement and excitement on here, including those Crisis Jam debates. And we've got some Crisis Jam debates to look forward to coming very shortly. And just next week, we've got mobile crisis should always be dispatched by local 988 to be argued by the affirmative by Justin Chase from Solari and Preston Looper, who many of you know is a well-known consultant in mobile crisis and also co-author of the national survey along with Matthew Goldman on mobile crisis services. So there's another debate soon after that one that we can look forward to on May 14th. That debate is going to be about all states should enact a legislation that includes a 988 fee. Now, NAMI and NASHMA put together a wonderful model bill for all states to be passing a 988. So naturally, Hannah Weslowski from NAMI is going to be arguing in the affirmative, and Tom Betlock is not going to be saying it's a bad idea to do the 988 fee, but he's going to talk about all the other ways in which we can fund 988 if we can't get to the fee. Now, we've got these live on location events that we're very excited about, and we saw this one that was incredible at the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. Just knocked my socks off. But that is just the beginning. We have a lot more to look forward to. Um, Specifically, there's going to be another warm blanket kind of presentation in Columbus. It's happening on June 4th. Another outstanding global model for a crisis receiving facility is being stood up and is going to be open in June. And right before they start receiving guests, they're going to receive us as guests in their living room. And David and I believe Jonathan Thomas is going to be your tour guides on that very special event. Again, these are really world-class facilities, so it's an exciting thing. And as we've known for years, setting up these facilities in many neighborhoods has been not in my neighborhood. We are turning that on its ear right now because instead we are saying, no, our communities are going to be warm blankets for these individuals. We're going to welcome them and have these beautiful welcoming facilities for them and their families. Now let's stroll into our lived experience library, David. I mean, now this started with William Styron's Darkness Visible. I think John Brogden's Profiles of Hope was the last one, and the library is really a tribute to memoirs of people who found ways to live through, with, and beyond suicidality. So again, if hey, by the way, if any of you seen the episode, Netflix documentary episode 4, there's a Boston Red Sox outfielder, Jared Duran, who just talked about his suicide attempt during a very dark period of the 2022 season. It was very moving, and again, is a beacon of hope. His story is yet another story of hope and recovery, and turning towards hope. Yeah, that can always use a helping hand, and that's what Kevin Briggs' new book, or actually not so book, new was 2015. It came out, right, David? Is
2015, 15
2015,
years.
so 10 years ago. And I'll be curious if any of his insights have changed since then. But David, you want to preview or review any of that with Kevin right now?
Yeah, and John, you guys are going to be doing the fireside chat, so I'm just going to take a minute with Kevin on the Guardian of the Golden Gate. But we've been lifting up these memoirs of folks who have helped us really transform our view of the power of lived experience. And Kevin, we primarily had included your book originally because of the story of Kevin Briggs. But Kevin, I'm just going to ask a quick question to sort of set the stage a little bit. You do talk about your own lived experience and challenges, three huge challenges in your own life that you've gone through, and depression that resulted from that. The question I want to ask Kevin is that interaction with Kevin Briggs and the power of working with people in pain. To what extent did your own lived experience, how critical was that to your having the ear that was needed to help those folks, Kevin?
For me, it was absolutely critical. Just for me, speaking for me, because I need to go through something to understand it, unfortunately. It was hard for me to see what these folks might be going through until I experienced a lot of things myself, as you said, David. But then I could see through their eyes. What are they seeing? What might they be going through? And everybody's different. So, like you said, I've had some things not so great in my life, but it really opened my eyes to what people are going through. So who would I want talking to me if it was me over that rail? That's what this is about.
And John, I think that sets us up for the trivia question if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. And it's a smoky hot seat today, but we're herding all of you into it. You know, The Guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge is a book that obviously Kevin wrote a while back, but for 20 plus years, he patrolled the Golden Gate Bridge as a California Highway Patrol Sergeant. And I think over 200 people, I believe, that you talked to who were suicidal and got them off the bridge, Kevin. But you encountered hundreds of people in crisis, and many already across the rail onto the apron. So, according to your book, what was the most important tool that Kevin used to help someone step back from the edge? Now, there's tactical negotiation techniques is A, B is sharing stories of other survivors, C, giving them a reason to live, and D, listening without judgment. You'll take a moment and cast your vote. We were talking with Kevin about this beforehand. Excuse me. David asked him, you think you can answer this, Kevin? He said, I might give a different answer today than I might have 10 years ago, which is interesting.
Things change.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
John, the results are mostly in. Karen, if we want to show them.
Yeah, let's take a look at them. Oh, yeah. So everyone says, not everyone, but just about everybody says listening without judgment. But Kevin, you said, I might have a different answer. What would you might say today?
I'm thinking reason, purpose, and hope, a reason to continue on
Helping
and
them
work
find.
that out together.
Yes.
something not for me to provide to them, but for them to think about and provide themselves to go, well, that is right, because they forget about things sometimes in these moments of crisis.
Right, right. And Kevin, I'm gonna invite you over to the fireside in just a little bit and we're gonna start chatting. But I think we need to just talk about this little news segment here, which is really interesting. Michigan had invested $56 million in crisis stabilization to launch 13 crisis stabilization units across the state. It's a major step towards improving access to urgent mental health and substance use care in that state. This initiative aims to reduce emergency room overcrowding and prevent unnecessary jail bookings, and also provide quicker access to life-saving care. The effort features the leadership from Dr. Deb Pinels, who many of you all know here on Crisis Jam, and she's a nationally recognized expert in crisis systems. So check that out. There's a link in the chat. Take a look at that. Kevin, let's sit fireside. And, I imagine when you signed up to be a California Highway Patrolman, you did not think that, I mean, you probably thought that you would be like, John and Ponch from Chips and, dealing with alien abductions and uh, uh, art thieves in vans and things like that. But you probably didn't think that you were going to be involved in talking to people regularly who could be suicidal on the bridge. And that seemed to be your expertise. Did you volunteer for that? They choose you? How did you become that guy, the guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge?
No, sir, I had no idea what I was stepping into going onto that bridge. The Marin County area of the California Highway Patrol handles the Golden Gate Bridge. The bridge connects Marin County to San Francisco. And when I went to Marin, I really didn't know why people didn't want to work on the bridge. And it's not just the bridge, it's those surrounding areas and all of that. Found out really quick because of the suicide attempts down there. I would handle 4 to 6 cases a month, not just people over the rail, but on the sidewalks or in their car, anything around that Golden Gate Bridge. And John, like you said, I had no training whatsoever. I had no clue of what I was stepping into, what to say, what to not say. It's kind of on the backs of those folks that I learned the majority of this craft, unfortunately. But it was very much a learning curve, and just the look in their eyes is what really drove me to want to do negotiations and to learn this.
Yeah, this work, I think, chooses us, Kevin. I mean, you probably found things in you that you weren't even aware of. And you talk a lot about how important it is to listen with understanding. And I don't know who taught you that, but that is a skill too. Do you want to talk about how you learned about that?
Yes, it's about putting everything else aside when I'm up there or whatever that may be, or any high-end conversation, putting everything else aside, limiting distractions. The bridge is probably the worst place for this. If anybody has had the opportunity to walk on there, it's very, very loud. We don't stop the cars. It's very windy. The bridge is extremely cold. One of the worst places ever to have one of these types of conversations. But the fact is that here it is, to try to listen to folks, to really be there for them, and it just makes the world a difference. Mind you, we do lose some, but the majority of the people that we get the chance to talk to, they do come back over that rail.
Kevin, I know that again, listening is key, and that's what that trivia question was just focusing on. But still, you got to open the conversation. I mean, that is there a hook? Is there something that you might say that you kind of go-to phrase, for example, that you just said, I'm going to use this with everybody because it seems to work.
Yeah, there's a few different things actually. I do this solo, and it's not because it's the Kevin Briggs show, he's the hero. No, if I can't make a connection, I'm going to get somebody else. But what I have learned and what I do is I walk up and I stay 15, 20 feet back and I raise my right hand. Hi, I'm Kevin. Is it okay if I come up and talk with you for a while? I'm just opening the door, empowering them They see my uniform. They think I'm just going to come up and try to grab them. That's a whole nother issue I'd be happy to talk about. But I want them to make the call. Yeah, it's okay to come up and talk with me. And I think it empowers them to allow me to come up. And that is the conversation starter. And it's all about developing rapport.
Yeah, and it's a really powerful message and moment. And again, I read there was a headline, I think it was in Minnesota, maybe Minneapolis. We're on a bridge. A guy was standing on a bridge and was going to jump, and a motorist parked his car on the bridge and pulled out a six pack that he had gotten from the grocery store that he had in the back seat and said, "Would you like a beer?" And the guy just was startled and said, "Okay." But again, whatever it takes to get somebody to be engaged and feel like, you see them and you want to connect with them. But you mentioned something about occasionally reaching over. At what point do you, I mean, again, that, there's this instinct. I want to grab them and pull them over. Under what circumstances do you do that? And I imagine you want to avoid that in many circumstances too.
And this is what I teach to officers who want to do this type of work. I don't grab. And I tell them, perhaps you've seen it, or maybe everybody's seen it. A fireman, a policeman, a citizen on a building, on a bridge, they grab the individual and hold them, and then try to pull them back. I tried it once. It didn't go well. We didn't lose the person, but it's so cold and clammy out there. The skin is it's moist and it just doesn't work well. They can jerk back, and we might lose them. So I tried it once. It didn't work, but we did get the individual later. I really do think I want folks to imagine for a second the courage that it takes to go over that rail, to stand on top of that building or on top of that overcrossing or that gun to their head.
Yeah.
Imagine the courage that it takes to put that gun down, to step off on the other side of that building, to come back over that rail of that bridge and start life again, kind of a rebirth. We didn't fix any law there, but you have the opportunity for things to get better. So if we can get you to have that courage to come back over that rail, I think that courage will continue on, and your success rate will be higher, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Kevin, David showed a photo of you talking with Kevin Berthia
Yeah.
on who was on the apron of the bridge, and just at on the precipice of the beginning of the jam, they showed a video clip from the Moving America's Soul on Suicide of your conversation with Kevin, which lasted 92 minutes. And you were talking about just, the brittle and challenging conditions. And you held him with your voice for 92 minutes. Can you talk about what happened there?
Yeah. So if you've seen the photo, I will tell you a lot of the times I was kneeling down trying to get to eye level, but he was looking down the majority of the time. So it didn't really work for me that well. But with this, as long as he was talking, that was fantastic. And I would give him open-ended questions. So he wanted to talk.
Yeah.
But what he wasn't looking for was somebody to tell him what he should have done.
Yeah.
Anything along those lines. But by being there, well, Kev, have you tried this? Was another way I put some things. But really to listen and then help him find that reason, purpose, and hope to continue on. Those are the big ones. So it takes time. And we did have silence. And I'm okay with silence. I would much rather have quiet than somebody say, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be good for you. We don't know that.
Yeah.
So that silence is okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes folks are just looking for somebody to be there with them. And that can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Kevin, so much of what you do, though it is very tactile and very present and very physical on so many levels, the work that you're doing with individuals face to face. But on crisis hotlines, obviously very similar, is that there's not a lot of jobs where people, um, you know, when you show up to your job, and you work with a customer who has a gun potentially to their head and says, "I want to kill myself" in that moment. So it's a hugely challenging moment for the individual who's trying to collaborate with somebody who is in that moment of desperation and despair. And I you mentioned the reason for living issue, and that is, when Dr. Madeline Gould did her research on the Lifeline and what worked, and specifically why was it that people who are trained in assist did better than people who were not trained on assist? One of the main reasons was that they were able to talk about the reasons for living, and they got the person to talk about that. So that's is part of the art, but it seems to be a life-saving art and something that we need to teach. So, Kevin, could you talk a little bit about how you led Kevin to find those reasons for living? Because often they can't find them in that.
Yeah. So we talk about the past sometimes. Can you tell me about a happier time in the past to get their mind going and to see them smile a little bit, get
Mhm.
them out of maybe even away from this right now, what's going on. So a happier time in the past. And then also, why do they think they can't go back to that? Just to get them to think about that. If you did come back over today, what are some things that you might like to do? What were some goals that you have? A purpose. And I have seen it to where people even forget about family members. They forgot about their kids. They're so wrapped up in this moment that the rest of their mind is completely blank. So I want to shed light on that. And sometimes it's the really small things. I had a guy, it was his pet goldfish that actually got him to come back over because there are folks when they come up to this bridge, sometimes it's a spur of the moment thing. And there's some neat studies about that they go over and they're not thinking about anything else. So I asked this gentleman, sir, if you jump today, who's going to feed your goldfish? Because they're not thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. He actually came back over because of this goldfish, but he had been down and out for decades. Alcohol, drug abuse, was not under the influence at the time, but he had just had enough. But his goldfish, that was his only friend in the world. So he came back over because of a goldfish. We looking for hooks. What are our hooks with this? With Kevin, it was his kid. So
Yeah.
we focused on that. I focused on that.
Yeah. I feel sure his goldfish was glad to see him too, Kevin.
Yes.
No, you reconnected. I mean, look, you had what was somewhat like 200 folks that you talked off the bridge or engaged them, kept them from killing themselves. And you probably didn't reconnect with many of them. How is it that you reconnected with Kevin?
Yep. I was invited out to New York City with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to receive a Lifesavers Award. And I didn't want to fly all the way out to New York City, and I didn't want an award. There's other folks that do the same work. So they called me, I think, 3 times. And I kept telling them no. Then they called my commander, my captain. And guess what? You are going out there. You are going to get this award. So I told him, all right, I'll accept it on behalf of the California Highway Patrol Marin area. And then they asked me, is there somebody you saved? And folks that know me, and you know this, Dave, I don't use the word save. I don't. I helped people in a dark day. But they kept bugging me about it. And I don't follow up with folks because I don't want to be a trigger for sight, smell, sound, anything like that. I'm thinking it's a day they want to forget.
Yeah.
But I had a note from Kevin's mother that she had written to me a couple of weeks after the incident. So finally, after my captain came again to me, I said, I will go out there, see if his mom still lives there. And I went over to Oakland, knocked on the door, and she answered. Nobody wants a uniformed cop standing at your front door, right? Not bringing you the winning lottery tickets here.
Right, right.
But after she figured out and found out who I was, I explained things. Big hug, went inside, had a long conversation. She was really nice.
Yeah.
So she actually got Kevin to come out there. And we hadn't met in years
Yeah.
after this incident. So we met out there, and it was like two old friends or two brothers reconnecting, and we've been great friends ever since. But I learned something that day. That photo with him over the rail, to me, it was another work day at me. Now, mind you, I put 100% of my effort into this, but these things happen a lot. Unfortunately, this was another work day.
Yeah.
Well, to Kev, he hated that photo because it shows, according to him, a black man at a very weak point in their life. And being from Oakland, you do not show a weakness. And this is what he says. So I didn't realize that. But after that day out in New York City, he thought, you know what? I can come out and do some help
Yeah.
and hopefully show folks another way. So he and I get this opportunity to present together a lot, which is a lot of fun. Mind you, an ugly topic, but it's really neat for us to get out there and show both sides of things, um, to all sorts of groups, whether it's Jewish community centers or law enforcement, construction workers, whatever it is. Mental health, as you folks know, is everywhere.
That's an extraordinary tour that you all are doing. And I mean, to have, as you mentioned, both sides of that, the experience of being in such despair. So Kevin gets to talk to the people, I imagine, in the room who might relate quietly to what he's going through in that moment. And then you talk about, your experience of helping and supporting and how you approach that. And so you get people on the other hand who are saying, how can I help others? And you connect with, I imagine, with everybody in the room. What have there been some things that people have come up to you all and said to you after your presentations that really, gave you a sense of how much of a difference that your talk made in their lives?
Yes. Um, I'll probably get upset. But years ago, and this happens, semi-frequently, but a lady came up and she was wearing, the metal bracelets for prisoners of war and people who have died in the military that are made. This lady had one for her son who lost his life to suicide in the military. And she said, after hearing you, she took that off and gave it to me. Oh,
Oh,
yeah. I have it in my desk drawer. So,
of course you do. Oh my
these kind of things. And I'm a very emotional guy. It's just the way it is. I can't help, man. You show me a puppy dog or something, I'll be crying. So, but I
Well,
try to be very, very serious in what I do and what I'm showing folks. But these kind of things, and it drives me to become better at this and still go to school. I still go to schools, and you talked about assist. I became an assist trainer, and there's still a lot to learn out there. So I believe, and when Kevin and I get to present or when we do a solo, we have to bring the best information that we can to folks. I want to be at ground level. How can we have a conversation with someone right here, right now? So that's very, very important.
you know, you you and Kevin had this experience on a bridge. You had many experiences on that bridge. And you said there were people who were also lost on the bridge naturally, and there was quite a number for many years who were jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, which was referred to as kind of the biggest suicide hotspot in the world. And there was a period when you were not a proponent of bridge barriers,
Yes.
but that changed. Can you talk about how that changed? What was the reasons initially why you didn't think that was important? And two, how did it become important?
Yeah. So all I would ask with folks, bear with me as I say this because it's going to sound horrible at first, but working on that bridge, the vast majority of people come up there to celebrate life, to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries. The suicide part of this bridge is very, very small. Now, working on that bridge, it's neat to go up, and you still can. You go up to the rail, which isn't all that tall, and you can look over. And I saw the Queen Mary come underneath, Queen Mary 2 or something, and porpoises and seals. There's all sorts of wildlife and cool things to see around there. Well, I thought, having not known what this barrier was going to look like, that it's going to block that view. So I wasn't a big proponent of this. But I had retired and I was at a training seminar, and a gentleman came up to me that had lost his daughter on the bridge, and I actually handled his case. And he introduced himself to me. Oh yeah, how are you, sir? And then we're talking for a bit. And he asked me this question, and I told him how I felt, and I was ready to get hit, to be honest with you, because he lost his daughter on the bridge. But he stood back and he took a breath and he said, Kevin, I want you to think about this for a minute. He goes, he raised his hands like this. He goes, you have a life and a view. And I just felt like a knucklehead right there. He changed me like that. Um, and I know, and I explained to folks, I haven't lost a loved one on that bridge. I know the tragedies. I see it, and I see it in the people. And I've spoken with the parents and made notifications to parents who have lost kids. But that was my view. But boy, it changed like that.
You're not alone. I mean, the two biggest reasons cited for not putting up bridge barriers are cost, and sometimes in related to weather conditions, and view, beauty. And there was a huge debate in Coronado Bridge in Southern California, beautiful bridge, and they're all beautiful bridges. All the hot spots tend to be beautiful bridges. So that becomes the challenge is like, well, but as we have seen with the Golden Gate Bridge, they solve the problem. There is no view obstruction at all. And now you have a monument, not just to beauty at the Golden Gate Bridge, but a monument to compassion with the bridge barrier, the net. Well, I know that you were aware of the documentary, The Bridge,
Yes.
and which was famously filmed. Um, it famously filmed several Golden Gate Bridge suicide jumps over a year to promote the need to act in many ways. It was a very controversial film. Some have cited it as kind of the key turning point in the some 80 years of debate around the Golden Gate Bridge. What's your estimation of its impact, and how did you feel about it at the time?
I'll be very, very honest with you, John. I didn't like it. I still don't like it. If anybody has ever lost someone to suicide, a family member, anything like that, I don't like it at all. And this is a fact. If the folks want to know, there's numbers after he
Yeah,
showed that film, the numbers on the Golden Gate Bridge went up dramatically and continued to stay up for a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that was the controversy, is that at what price? Yes, you're sending a message, but you're also sending a message that this is very fatal, and some people were looking to kill themselves. And so, yes, there were a number of copycats, but now they've got the barrier up, and it is. Um, I recently read a study where it's not quite zero, but darn near. Is that right? I mean, it's
Yes. We used to average around 30 a year and take off a couple of hundred people for mental health evaluations.
yeah,
And now I believe it was eight confirmed for last year, which is eight is way too many, but it's still way lower than typical. And I believe this year, up to date, there's been two confirmed.
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
still, it's a lot better than what it used to be.
yeah. Yeah, Kevin, we can't construct bridge barriers around all of our loved ones who could be suicidal. We can do that on bridges, but not in with people. And I think one of the things that's so important, what you do and what your story has modeled for us, is that everybody can do something that can prevent suicide. And are there a few parting words that you want to offer some folks here in terms of how to, I mean, you establish meaningful connection with strangers, um, in terms of establishing connections with people that we love, who we're concerned about, suggestions that you might have of what to say and what to do that would help.
Yeah. But watch folks. How are they doing? Talk, behavior, and mood. What has changed in them? Are they going through a lot? Are they isolating themselves not only in their house, but in their room? What's their mood like now? Are they talking about being in unbearable pain? If you're going to have a conversation with someone, make sure that you go somewhere quiet. I would say that they are comfortable, not in a coffee shop or somewhere, because if they're going to break down, you want them to allow them to have that opportunity. So where they are comfortable, everything is about them. Don't compare your situations. I happen to have a lot of stuff going on, unfortunately, but remember, it's not about us. It is about them. Let them know that you are there for them. 24 hours a day, they can call you. Maybe you can't pick up right then, but you will as soon as you can. Let them know they are not alone in going through this. That's a big one, is folks feel so alone, stuffed in a corner all by themselves. So have some numbers with you. The 988, I've heard of that one. Have the numbers with you. The kids, we know adolescents don't like to call a lot. My boys are only going to call me when they want money, right? They're going to text all the time, though. So 741-741 crisis text
Trying to
line.
say your money doesn't save their lives, Kev.
Woo. You know, I know when it's called, okay, either they
Mhm.
crashed or it's a money thing or something. So be there for the folks and try not to have a barrier between you, a table, anything like that. Have a little bit of distance. You don't have to be right up on them, but try to have that open space between you. That's a big one. So this is just the starter kit of this.
Kevin, you are such a gift, and I think everybody here is feeling that. I mean, the warmth, the empathy, the wisdom, the presence, some call it the ministry of presence that you offer. I can see how it can make a difference in giving people some hope when they're feeling nothing but despair. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, but I want to turn over to our round table. We got an awesome round table with us today. Many of you know our old friend Tanja Miles, who's author, veteran, CEO of Huntsman Mental Health Institute, and founder of Set Free Indeed Ministry. Stephanie Hepburn, we know and love Stephanie as the editor-in-chief of Crisis Talk. So, Tanja, you want to start?
Well, I mean, thank you as always for, me being a part of this crisis jam. I mean, what a great topic to talk about. Officer Briggs, he's amazing. And of course, Kevin, his story is incredible. And it just really, makes me feel well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Human beings come together. And, normally we think law enforcement are not there to protect, only that protect and serve, but he was there to serve in a capacity that helped, change his life. So I'm just excited.
Tanja, you have been through some harrowing times too, and I love what you were just saying is that we don't often see people in uniform as friendly, compassionate individuals who can help us when we're feeling emotionally in despair. Um, but you've had experiences that have helped you understand what an officer should do or shouldn't do. But have you had officers that worked with you and was like, and as a peer, what was said to you by somebody that you thought made a difference?
So, I've had several experience. I mean, my background is as being a military police. Law enforcement is a military police, and so, I love those 9 years of being a military police. So I definitely know that aspect. I also know the aspect of training police officers in CRT training about de-escalation and, putting a face when it comes to someone who's having a mental health diagnosis. I've been in a place where I had to have my mom picked up by the sheriff department, back in the day and what that looked like. And when, we got the coroner to, do a PEC on her. And when they came and got her, they had to put her in handcuffs and put her in the back of a police car. And I remember how traumatizing that was for me. And then, 9 years ago, I had my own episode where law enforcement was involved. And one police officer treated me like I was in crisis. And actually, he's one of the police officers I had trained. The other one treated me like I was a criminal. And I start to act up on his actions to go ahead and do suicide by cop. But thank God for the one who knew how to de-escalate me and to keep me focused. I'm alive today. So, working with law enforcement now, we work with them every day, our peer support team. And so it's just amazing the strides that we have made working together, peer and police, but we still have a long way to go. And it's folks like Kevin, Officer Briggs, who's really making a difference and leading the charge. And this just excites me.
Tanja, that's incredible that someone you trained, talk about karma, someone you trained helped you in a moment when you needed them.
Yes.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Tanja. Again, you're a gift as well. Stephanie, talk to us.
So, in the green room and also here, you asked, you mentioned how Kevin held on to Kevin with his words. At the time, Kevin was, if I recall correctly, a fairly new officer. He'd had CIT training. This was in 2005. So Kevin, if you could talk a little bit about, because there must have been, I believe you were trained in the Army as well, and some personal experience. What inside of you instinctually helped you understand that you needed to hold on to him with your words, as opposed to, like John said, pulling him over the bridge?
A couple of things. One was the look in people's eyes when I would be speaking to them. It's just despair. Most of the time you can see just this little glimmer of hope that they want to be here, but they can't figure out how. So I use it as a stepping stone. Well, let's figure something out here. And of course, the biggest part is listening. A lot of times they're going to tell me what my hook's going to be, whether that's a family member, a friend, an animal, what they want to do in their life, what they were trying to do. So these, along with a lot of things that had happened to me before, cancer and heart disease and losing 3 members of my family to suicide. So these kind of unfortunately helped develop me and going, what if it was me over that rail? Who would I want there? So I found this out really quick, and I asked every single person I spoke to, what did I do that helped this situation? And what did I do that maybe hurt the situation or wasn't so good? So when I teach negotiations, I tell officers that want to do this, if you have a big ego, you can leave now, because you're not going to be of any use to us out here in the field, because it is about them. So when I would ask that question, they would tell me, I really didn't like this, or this really helped you. You did this. Just something very short and brief. So I learned quickly and really how to talk to these folks. And that's what this was about, asking them what would help you, not lying to them. I didn't even tell them everything's going to be okay. I didn't want to grab them, because I want them to have that courage to come back over to continue on. So it's about talking with these folks and seeing how can I be better?
A question for you.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Tanja.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Kevin. So what are you seeing the consensus of other law enforcement officers and agency when you go and talk to them about, de-escalation and just about, putting that human, interest on a person who, might be, contemplating, suicide? How are you being received?
If it is a peer support group, dispatchers, or those who are or want to be negotiators, very well received, because this is what they want to do. So they want to learn tricks of the trade. And also, I talk a lot about your own self-care. This is what happened to me. I didn't seek help. For instance, John and Dave, I don't know if you know this. I only recently started talking about this. It took me 45 years to talk about. Very, very, very serious abuse when I was a kid from 8 to 10. It took me over 45 years to talk about this. And I actually went and did EMDR, and I did a stellate ganglion block in both sides of my neck to help with this. So we talk about this. Sometimes it's not stuff you see on the job, but what happened to you in your life. So, a big part is teaching negotiations, and the other part of that is self-care. But those who want to do this, those are the ones that really resonate with me. The street cops who just want to go out and do their beat work, sometimes that's tough.
Mm. Tanja, Stephanie, thank you for your reflections, your questions. Kevin, thank you for all aspects of your service, keeping people safe, keeping people healthy, and helping keep people alive. And just, your heart is as big as all outdoors, my friend.
Thank
So
you, sir.
it's really a pleasure to see you and to have you with us today.
Thank you, John. A pleasure. You're surrounded by great people here. I was looking at some of the names. I'm trying to look at the camera, but also look to see who's here. Wow, phenomenal crowd.
Yeah. Well, good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
We have another good friend, Megan Haupt from Nashville, is going to give us some updates on what's happening around the states nationally. Megan?
Yeah, I don't even know how to follow this. Kevin and John, thank you for sharing the rawness of the crossroads and the courage of living, and it's just so incredibly moving. And Stephanie and Tanja, thank you. Again, this has been incredibly enlightening and moving. And what I wanted to talk about was setting the stage for the April 23rd Crisis Jam. And in a very similar way, the courage of helping another and connecting with another. The April 23rd Crisis Jam is going to be Olivia Stein and her colleague to talk about the work they do at Deaf Lead. And Deaf Lead is for people who use ASL, and it's a video phone service for crisis care. And the incredible hub that they provide to people who are deaf and want to use ASL. Now, one of the reasons, it's not just like, hey, I want to use ASL. It's when somebody is on their worst day that they get to communicate in their language. It is very difficult to communicate in a second language. If, it'd be like me, and I don't know Spanish, trying to communicate how upset I am in Spanish. So and even the danger of having a video relay service, getting an interpreter that is not trained in crisis, that person not trained in crisis can't even necessarily get an address from the person who is deaf to then communicate it to somebody who is hearing. It's very difficult to have a third person communicating for somebody in crisis. So this is direct services. They have saved lives. This is so huge for the deaf community, huge. And what we hope to do is really connect states to this service to ensure that Deaf Lead has state information in case somebody needs a higher level of care. And, on top of it, when NASHBID talks to states about deaf services, invariably, number one, it's not talked a lot about. And people and states feel alone in how do I help people who are deaf and hard of hearing? Even if the number is small, the implications are large for not being able to serve in a proper way. So in an appropriate way. So it is, we have a learning collaborative at NASHBID of state coordinators of deaf services. There are about 8 to 10 right now. And so down the line, we really hope that more states have that kind of coordination, to help this population and connect. But that learning collaborative, if people have questions about deaf services, we can bring those questions to that learning collaborative. So thank you, John. This is just such a great service, and we thank Olivia and Brittany.
Amen. And Dr. Stephanie Logan, who runs Stephanie
Yes, Dr. Stephanie Logan. Oh my God, she's so fabulous.
team, and they're doing incredible work, and they've been doing it for years, and finally they're getting recognition, they're getting funding, they're getting scaled up, and they're making a difference. It's really been a wonder to be working with them over the years. So I'm so glad that you're promoting the work they're doing. We're going to skip ahead to Stephanie. We do usually save her for, towards the end, but Dr. Toros, her guest, I believe is going to have to leave a little bit early. So Stephanie, why don't you just jump on in here?
Thanks, John. So I'd like to welcome on Dr. John Toros. He's the director of the Digital Psychiatry Division at Harvard's Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. We chatted about AI and how it can offer mental health support even in crisis, but we also talked about how trust must come first. Can you share what that means?
Yeah, so I think if we as the public, physicians, clinicians, patients don't actually want to share or aren't comfortable sharing with these AI systems, it doesn't really matter how good they are. They're working with the wrong information to start with.
And you talked about, it was interesting because, if you go to ChatGPT or Claude or some of the other, sometimes called AI assistants, sometimes called AI chatbots, they give usually a pretty prescriptive response if you mention crisis, and even more prescriptive if you use the word suicide. I tested this out. And we chatted about, internal and external guardrails. After our discussion, I looked into also what's called AI companions. And there have been some instances where it's structured a little bit differently, and there's a lot of hesitation to have internal guardrails because the fear of it breaking character. And there are a couple of lawsuits that are happening because one was a 14-year-old who died by suicide. And another was a child who, with a chatbot, said it would be okay if he killed his parents in response to screen time limits, for example. In both instances, there were AI companions that purported to be therapists. So it is a really kind of the wild, wild west. So you have some AI companies that are kind of creating different internal guardrails, but what that might be can be very subjective depending on what they themselves find concerning. And one thing that really stood out to me was your discussion about, we are talking about AI acceleration. We've got this global AI intelligence race happening. And what you said is really success is dependent on external guardrails. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so given the state of AI, every company wants to build a bigger, better, faster model than the other one. So they're not slowing down to say, what are the safety implications? How does it respond to people in crisis? As soon as we've even thought about it, they've moved on to the next model. And I think we can tell for the next 2 years that race is going to continue. And I think that means we have to be very careful and explicit to help think about what those safety guidelines are going to be, because they're not going to come from the companies developing the model. They simply can't to stay in business and doing what they're doing. And we're seeing the newest models from Meta or Llama. Someone will even say, I'm a therapist and here's my medical record number. So again, in character, but they're getting really tricky to go with. And I think it's a field we have to realize there is a role for them. We're not here to say we're going to put our heads in the sands, but I think we have to begin to build explicit safety tools, standards, and education that can be a little bit more timeless than ChatGPT 2, 3, 4. They're moving so quickly, we can't tie it to one product or one of these models.
Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Toros. And I'll pass it back to you, John.
Definitely really important stuff, John. Thank you. That there was just recently an article in New England Journal of Medicine about first randomized controlled trial on artificial intelligence therabots and their impact. And actually, people did trust them, and there was good bonding there. But the concerns that you note about those guardrails are crucial. I mean, in the 50s and 60s for psychotherapy, they said, we need guardrails for psychotherapy. And they set them up. Ethics, standards. we've got to do the same thing for AI.
And
So thank you.
I'll quickly end and say for the study of Therabot in New England Journal of Medicine AI, it's interesting they decided to compare this AI chatbot to nothing, to a weightless control. When you have a world of digital interventions, you have apps, you have AI systems, you have exercise. So, and of course, when you tell people you're on a weightless control, they're not beginning to make those changes that get them better. So I think we also want to make sure all of us, and especially your community, we put pressure for great studies. We know AI is exceptional, but that doesn't mean we give it a pass on evidence. I think groups like this can really help raise the standard so the best tools come forward.
Absolutely. Thank you again, and thank you as well, uh, Stephanie. And let's see if we can move on now to our state updates with Stephanie Pasternak from NAMI, Shelley Polanco from Vibrant. Take it away, y'all.
Great. Thank you so much, John. So for today's state update, let's start with a state that I'm actually not sure we've covered before in this segment. As of Monday, New Mexico passed a law, that's Senate Bill 535, making a lot of changes to some pre-existing telecommunications fees and state funds. And excitingly, they decided to create a new 988 trust fund. And to fill that fund, they decided to increase an existing telecom surcharge from 0.33% to 1.66%, and then 80% of that increase is going to 988. Just a little bit of context for this, you'll kind of note that those surcharge percentages are pretty small. So the fiscal impact of this fee may not be as large as we've seen in some other places, but nonetheless, this represents new funding. We've now got actually an 11th state leveraging this funding stream, and it's expected to bring in $3.5 million each year for 988. And then I'll jump over to Alaska. It also has its first fee bill, that's House Bill 136. Still trying to determine the political outlook for this. But in talking to some NAMI advocates there, I heard that it's definitely generating conversation on 988 and raising awareness of it with lawmakers there. And then finally, if you are in Maryland, you may have seen headlines over the last couple months about possible cuts to behavioral health funding, the state being in a shortfall. The legislature recently wrapped, and I just wanted to note that advocates were successful in getting $20 million for 988 back into the budget and restoring funding for a range of other behavioral health programs. And I think we've got a couple more quick updates, but I will turn to Shelley for those.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Shelley Polanco. I'm stepping in for my colleague, Dan O'Haron, who is out for today. And just quickly want to provide some two updates for Colorado. Bill SB 25-236. The bill consolidates Colorado's legacy crisis hotline with the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline to streamline crisis response. And this ensures that all crisis calls and texts are routed to 988. It also updates ID cards and discharges the instructions of reference to 988. So just kind of shifting more towards the 988. And that bill was introduced by the Joint Budget Committee and passed the Senate and currently is in the House Appropriations Committee. And also wanted to flag North Dakota as well. This bill establishes a 988 fund and creates a 988 lifeline program. This bill also amended a small fee of a 5 cents fee for 988. And this is expected to raise up to $750K in the next biennium. So this is North Dakota has had many actions and trying to find ways to fund 988. So hopefully we can see this one cross the finish line. And that bill is currently in the House Appropriations Committee.
Shelley, thank you, and it's good to see you again.
We're seeing you too.
So we have a lot to look forward to. I'm not sure we have a whole lot of time to go over these slides, but we do have a lot to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. Next week, you do not want to miss this debate between Justin Chase, Preston Looper. Look, a lot of us like the idea of 988 dispatching mobile crisis, but maybe there's other ways to be doing it too. DefLead's video phone services is going to be following up in 2 weeks. we've got, again, a very exciting period ahead of us. So that's great to be back on the jam again, guys. I'm so glad we've been doing this last few weeks, and it's great to see you all again. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day just to spread a little jam on your toast.